Hello, everybody. I am the Proactive Caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. You know, that is a statement I absolutely understand now, but didn't appreciate it until I started to reflect on Mom's past. And I was reflecting because I wanted to figure out, how did we get here? And is this going to happen to me? I also appreciate life as a caregiver after taking a couple of months to reflect and understand all the things that I've experienced with her over the past several years. While I gradually became more of a proactive caregiver, I recognized that I used all that I had in my toolbox at the time to analyze like an accountant, to basically look at every situation we were faced with, to analyze it and figure out what was happening, what could be done, how to read the room, and definitely when to read between the lines. But there was one moment that I didn't read well. There was one moment that I felt blindsided me. And again, after reflecting on it, I can see why. So today I want to talk to you about what happened when our journey came to an end. Over the years, for as long as I could remember, Mom was not one to be touchy-feely hugs and kisses kind of a parent. And now I understand why. But she did make it a point to say, "I love you." So as I got older, and especially stepping into the caregiver role, there was always this thing between all of us, which was, "I love you." And she would always say, "I love you more." And that's what I missed. In the end, when we got the call and everybody rushed out to see how Mom was doing after having first a stroke and then a seizure, she did have a day where she bounced back just enough. And in that day, it gave me just enough hope that even though I knew the end was coming, it wasn't quite there yet. So I spent some time with her, and I tried to do the same things we had been doing. I pulled out the Scrabble, I pulled out the dominoes, and just as I laid out the Scrabble in front of her, I got that thought that bubbled up from the spirit that said, "Just be with her." So I looked at her and asked, "Mom, are you up for playing?" And she just slowly nodded her head. "Okay, we don't have to play. Let's just watch TV." So I took the board, put it together, and set it aside. But something felt really different in me. Something felt a little bit more heavy as I pulled those pieces off the Scrabble table and went to go put them away. And that message came up again. Breathe. Just be with her. So we spent some time, and I got a chance to just be still. The one thing I had struggled with for so many years with her, and I was just still with her. The TV was on, but I don't think either one of us was really watching what was happening. It was like we were just ruminating in this pending end. So I got a point that now I'm hungry. I need to nourish myself. She seems fine. She looks good. I have a moment. I'm going to step away, go get some lunch for myself, and then I'll be back. So I got up, and as I started to walk near her, I kissed her on the forehead, and said, I'll be right back. I'm going to go get myself a meal because I'm hungry. As I started to walk to the door, I looked back and I said, I love you. She didn't respond. I said, hey. And she just kind of slowly looked up. I said, I love you. She just looked back, real nostalgic, and just said, I love you. Wow. It made me feel really good because it was a real genuine, I love you. And just for a second as I was leaving the room, I thought, wow, she must feel good. She didn't say like she normally, I love you more, which sometimes felt like a rehearsed response. Because those voices in there that says she doesn't really love me, she just loves what I do for her, she doesn't really love me because she wouldn't have said or did this thing. That voice didn't come back this time. That voice said, something's not right. I still took a deep breath and I went and I got something to eat because I knew I wouldn't be strong for her physically, mentally, emotionally if I didn't have nourishment. So I took advantage of the moment and thought, wow, I finally have lunch. I'm full. I just want to relax a little bit because there was that part of me that knew this is different. This isn't like the other visits that we've had. Something's different. So I avoided going back. I avoided reality. I started to watch TV. I started to relax. I started to disassociate. And I thought, she's doing good. Everything's fine. I can go back tomorrow. And then 8 o'clock rolled around, 8 p.m., and I got the phone call from hospice saying, she's had another seizure. You need to get here quickly, and you need to notify family. I grabbed the shoes, got myself together, grabbed the purse out the door. On the way, I'm making phone calls. It's time. It's time. It's time. And even though I was saying it, I didn't really know what that meant. I know that sounds odd, but when you watch a loved one pass, and if it's not an immediate, like there's a heart attack, there's a stroke, there's an aneurysm, something where they just stop living in the moment immediately, it's hard to know what to expect. But when I got there, another part of me shifted into gear. That doer stepped right in and said, what's going on? Give me the details. I want to know what's happening. Why? What can I do? Because I didn't want to feel in that moment. I just needed to do. I needed something to do. I needed something to stay busy with. Especially because I made the phone calls. Get there, it's time. Get there, it's time. And I was having to make the phone calls to family members that I hadn't been in the same room with in 6 years. Caregiving is hard. And it's not hard just because of assisting with the daily activities. It's physically stressing or emotionally exhausting. It's hard because we are all doing our best and all approaching this the best way we think we know how to, with as many tools as we have at that particular time. And still, there are so many things that get lost in translation. So I stepped into the room and immediately felt the need to just wall up all of the emotions from the outside. No outside arrows coming in, because I had enough of that going on the inside. All of the thoughts started flooding through. You should have done this. You should have done that. You could have done this. Had you done more of that? Why didn't we do this? Why didn't you notice this? Why didn't you come back sooner? I didn't need additional, because I was already doing that to myself. I was already going through the memories. Wow, I can't believe over the years that have passed, when I stepped into this journey with her, how I became so angry because she knew better. She raised me after all. She told me certain things that I had to do. A lot of those things were some of the things she wasn't doing herself. How my initial thoughts were, wow, this is going to be so much more fun and we're going to have so much more quality time together. Until quality time was us maybe chatting on the way to a doctor's office, in the waiting room, maybe having a few chuckles in between while we were waiting for the doctor or nurse to come in. But the rest of the time, that quality time was me assisting with her activities of daily living. And at that point, I realized this isn't just going to be the girl time and we're going to go shopping and we're going to hang out and go have pedicures and manicures together. This is me helping mom in the shower. This is doing her laundry. This is cooking. This is managing her meds, managing her finances. And that was work. That was work for a very long time. So instead of looking forward to quality time, again, that doer steps up and says, what do we've got to do today? We've got to do this, 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 and this. Let's knock this out. Check, check, check. Okay, now we can leave so we can go home and relax. I stopped focusing on quality time. And where I was angry with my siblings for not contributing as much help, I acknowledged they were also in the same space, that same heart space. It's hard. Caregiving is messy. And it's not just messy because there's an incontinent moment to clean up after, or many times towards the end when mom would vomit in the car rides, which meant I had to clean up the car, or in the living room, or in the doctor's office, or what have you. That's not the kind of mess I'm talking about. I'm talking about the emotions, the things that we normally want to run away from, the things we try to avoid because it feels icky. And it's hard to be in that space on a daily basis. And sometimes that space that we're in, that we're trying so hard to avoid, is what keeps us from seeing what really is happening. In the last 2 years with mom, when all the family drama was set aside and it was just focusing on mom, I was able to see more intently the stages, the step downs. I knew what was happening. I knew what was coming. And it was this compartmentalized mind that said, yep, check, she's in stage 5. She's doing these things. Yep, she's there. She's now in late stage 5. Check, yep, she's there. She's doing these things again. But when her kidneys started to fail, and I actually started to search for hospice services for her, it wasn't just checking the box. It was this, again, disassociated feeling of, is this really happening? Are we actually there? And then immediately the thought in my mind, nope, we're not there. She's got plenty of time. But what I didn't know then was I was comparing other people living with dementia and how long it took until they got to a stage, or how long they stayed in the stage, or what stage they went to next. I was comparing those details thinking, we have time. But now I can say, she didn't have as much time as I thought she was going to have. See, understanding the stages of dementia helped me so much, because I was able to see the difference in her behaviors and see the decline of her abilities, to point out the limitations she was finally reaching every couple of months. But understanding what each stage would be, what it would look like, what I could expect, did not mean I understood what it was going to feel like in each stage. Advocating for Mom over those last 2 years was emotionally exhausting, because instead of being angry with Mom for not taking better care of herself, I was angry with the industry. How can you be this industry that says, we can help you as a caregiver, we can help your loved one, but then watch it turn into this administrative bureaucracy, this exploitation of fulfilling needs, but it's going to cost this much. Oh, now you need this? Well, now it costs this much. And now it costs this much. You know, Mom was fortunate as a teacher to have her pension to fall back on. There are so many caregivers that are not as fortunate. And so when we are coming to assisted and memory care, hospice, home health, any of those services, outpatient, inpatient, occupational therapists, when we are coming to them for help, it always turns into, what does your insurance cover? And the insurance somehow covers just enough, or others make just enough over the threshold that they do not receive the benefits that they actually need. Or there are time limits on the benefits of how many appointments, how many services are allotted, when in cases like Mom, they're not going to get better. And that's something that I, as a caregiver, had to struggle and accept. She's not getting better. We're just trying to give her the best quality of life she can have while she's still living. The need for education in assisted living, in home health, in hospice even, for people to understand what dementia is so apparent now. Because even down to the very end, I had, whether it was a med tech or other caregivers telling me, she's doing good. No, she still can. And they would rattle off some activities of daily living that she was still capable of doing. But then I would get there and I would see she's not capable of doing. So it would make me feel untrustworthy of the care she received, or doubted their level of education, their knowledge of dementia, or they know more than they're willing to tell me. They're trying to protect me as a caregiver because they're not telling me the truth. Because in the same week that mom started having seizures, I had one person say she's doing great. She's going to be fine. She's going to live for so much longer. She's doing so good. But the reality started to settle in slowly when I can see myself. She wasn't doing as good. And the changes that started happening week to week. Because, in those early stages when all I had was to understand what stages could be expected and what they were going to look like and what she was going to either be able to do or not be able to do, those stages took anywhere from a year to 3 years before she had to step down. But in this wind down process, mom was changing by the week. And then it was by the day. And then it was by the hour. This is the time period that every caregiver needs to gather their support network. You need to have one so strong. And it doesn't need to be a quantity. You don't need to have 5, 10, 15 individuals, but you need to have a network around you so that when you are making that phone call, it's time. They know exactly what that means. And they are in place supporting you every step of the way. Many cases, that is hospice. But in my situation with mom, it wasn't. The hospice company that we chose failed us miserably. All of the confidence that I had was out the window because now I'm in panic mode. And I got there because although I was in agreement with all the parts of me that this is a journey that has an end and we are approaching that end, by the time it actually came to the end, I wasn't ready. I wanted her to fight. I wanted her to be that survivor she was always telling me she was. But at the same time, I knew she's tired. She's hurting too. And I think to a degree, she knew this isn't the quality of life she wants for much longer. That internal dialogue and unwillingness to just let go, I couldn't do it. So I let that doer take over. And I sat at her bedside, had the little oximeter, I was checking her heart rate, her oxygen, putting the compress on her forehead. And because we had such a poor quality of hospice, I was on my phone, Googling, trying to understand. Is it common for those living with dementia to have seizures in the end, to have strokes in the end? And it is common. But I didn't know that in the moment. So it was very traumatizing when Mom suddenly would have a seizure and she would appear to be in pain. But she wasn't. So even though the rounds of morphine was started, that is the part of the body, this amazing body that our soul resides in. That is the body still fighting for life. So even though Mom in her heart had given up and was ready to just let go and go home, her body was still fighting. So she went from years of transitioning to months, to weeks, to days. And in the last 5 days of her life, I was still learning as a caregiver what to expect. What was it going to look like? What was it going to feel like? What was it going to smell like? Because they tell you in the end, even if your loved one looks incoherent and looks like they're just sleeping or in a coma, they can still hear you. And they encourage you to speak to them, get close to them, speak to them, and let them know how much you love them, how much they meant to you. Even words of forgiveness. Because we all want to know that in the end. We all want to know that we are loved, we were needed, we are appreciated for every sacrifice. And as life happens and dilemmas come up, we are also forgiven. So in the end, I made it a point to pray with her and get as close to her as I possibly could. The problem was I wasn't expecting, as her body was giving up and releasing and slowing, that the gases would start coming up. And so when I leaned in close to her, trying to say, I love you, trying to say anything, I couldn't. I couldn't get my face close to her anymore. I knew she wasn't going to be able to respond, but I wanted her to hear those last words from me. Was that I loved her. And I thank God that she was the soul chosen for me to come through into this world through. It was odd though, because in the early morning hours, the day she actually passed, I had my sisters with me. And I felt the need to step back. They needed to sit close because I had been with her for many years. And I suddenly had this thought, this feeling that just washed over me. And so I told him, she's hanging on. She is hanging on until she feels from each of us that we're going to be okay. That regardless of what our life had become, the family drama that ripped us apart, because we were all doing the best we knew how, but it was hurting each other in the process. She needed to know that we would find our way. We would find our way back to each other someday. And I guess by saying it out loud, it was acknowledgement. Because just a few hours later, she let go. This journey has changed me, and it's still changing me. But from the time I stepped away from the corporate world, to stepping in as her caregiver, I didn't acknowledge myself as caregiver because then I was an angry daughter and partially hurt friend. But the more she needed, the more I felt the need to step in and advocate. And now I can embrace that survivor she tried to be over all those years for various reasons. And I also acknowledge there are far more caregivers out there that need this kind of help. They need to understand what it means to be an advocate for their loved one and for themselves. The bottom line is, no matter how much I stressed and fought with my family, I would do it all over again if given the chance. Only this time, I would ensure to communicate more with compassion. And I sure as would have started therapy from the very beginning, instead of waiting until we were ripped apart to try and figure out the pieces later. So even though I had stepped in with that idea of what in the world is happening, and will this happen to me? I know it won't. Because, as I said, this journey has changed me, and it's continuing to change me. And now I know what needs to be done going forward to fight for other caregivers as well. Mom taught me a lot, more than she will ever know. And even now, as she looks down on me and smiles, I can still hear her saying, "Go get him, girl." Caregiver's job is never done. So even as some have lost their loved ones, and there is relief that the suffering is over, it's not entirely over, because now it's just the next chapter in life for me. And that next chapter includes fighting for others, fighting for regulatory changes. So as Mom used to tell me, it's not goodbye, it's so long for now. If you are a caregiver that is in the end stage of your journey, and you are faced with becoming, yet again, a new version of yourself just to get through that. If you have not already started therapy, please look into it and get something started, because we are not meant to be on this journey alone. We were never intended to take this burden on alone. And even though there are companies out there that claim to be your knight in shining armor, so to speak, to help you as caregivers, but then their actions don't speak louder, there are other caregivers out there that you can connect with through support groups. I invite you to join our monthly refuel, because whether your caregiver days have changed and your loved one has either passed on or they are still there is so much we learn from each other in every stage of our journey. And that is why I understand when Mom said it's not goodbye. It's only so long for now. So I hope today's episode gives you a little bit of food for thought. And just know my heart is with you. You can find more blogs and videos about this journey that is still evolving on proactivecaregiver.com. I hope this episode did give you some food for thought and some hope as well. Until next time, take care, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for joining today. To find out more about becoming a proactive caregiver yourself, visit proactivecaregiver.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Music provided by www.joystock.org. The Proactive Caregiver is produced by Canon Light Media.